Bree, welcome to the show. Great to have you here.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
It is my pleasure. For those who haven't encountered your work, perhaps you could share a little bit about who you are and what you do.
So, as you open, my name is Bree. I live in New York. And right now, what I'm doing is getting ready for my book launch. I wrote a book called Today Was Fun, a book about work, seriously, which will be out in July. Before that, I had a whirlwind of a career from teaching seventh grade math to high school physics to I tried to be an actor for a little while. That went terribly. Found my way into innovation and consulting, ultimately into organizational design and culture and employee experience. And that's where I've spent a bunch of my career over the last decade and some, and decided after taking a lot of that in, I needed to exhale a lot of that out into a book. And so that's what I'm up to now.
Amazing, amazing. Yeah, I had a short foray into acting myself.
Mm.
It didn't last that long. But I think the problem with that is that it's so time intensive. You think, oh, I've learned some skills. Now I'm going to be in films, but it may take 15 years before you actually get cast for anything. So,
Oh my gosh.
yeah,
Yeah,
glad
the
to.
effort does not correlate with the reward, is what I learned. And
Well,
but now I have a corporate stage, and so that's sort of like theater. I do a lot of keynotes and things like that.
exactly, exactly. And you still get to do creative things, such as writing your book. So let's find out a little bit more about Today Was Fun. That's not something we always hear from people in the workplace. What do you hope readers take away from it?
I hope they read it and then they say that more. That's ultimately the goal of the book, that they find new ways in their work and how to make their own experience more joyful, that of their team more joyful. I also hope that they take away skills and perspectives that help them decenter work from their identity and their existence and find joy in other places in their life. But it it was born really because I did have all these professional experiences in culture consulting, employee experience, values, purpose. So I felt really attuned to what was happening in workplaces, especially with knowledge workers. And then I had some personal experiences as well that just sort of propelled me to write the book. So specifically, my mother was diagnosed with cancer. She passed away a few years ago. And I remember being in the waiting room with her and thinking, God, all these people just are desperate for more days. And then I talked to colleagues who were like, oh my God, can we be done with this week already? Like, when is it going to be Friday? And it just made me feel like, of all the different things we're trying to do to make work better, this is much more of an emergency than I ever understood before, because these are the days of our lives. And so out came this book, a little bit of personal experience, a little bit of professional experience.
Hmm. Well, it's so true. People saying, I just want to get this week over and I just got to get through today. And there are people out there who would do anything to have this week, to have this day. And we often don't realize that until, something serious happens. So I love the idea of making today a good day. What are some of the key topics that you cover in the book?
Yeah, so it's my first book, which I maybe should have written like 8 years ago. So I'm like sort of overdue with all the ideas in my head of like 10 different ways you can make today better. And so instead of one theme, there's eight. I'm sorry, I got that wrong. There are seven chapters describing different aspects of how you can structure your working days and your life to have better days. So, for example, one is about debunking professionalism. One of the things that I really believe matters in having a good day is the way that you can show up at work without your business mask on.
Hello, it's Brad Hook here, and I'm delighted to share my new book, Start with Values. It is a guide to help you discover what matters most and then bring those core values to life through tools such as micro habits. It helps you make clearer decisions through the decision making guide. It helps you to activate your values in conversations, particularly those courageous conversations where you need to assert yourself. And it helps you explore some potential shared values, such as nature stewardship, to help us all look after this planet that we call home. Inside, you'll find thought experiments, you'll find worksheets, you'll find action plans, and lots more. If you are interested in reducing your stress and building a life that's meaningful and purposeful, get your copy now. They're available on Amazon, both as a paperback book, such as this, and in Kindle format. So if you have some feedback, please log it in the reviews. I'd love to hear your experience of bringing your values to life. This approach has helped hundreds of thousands of people around the world, and it's now ready for you. Get your copy.
And so some of that is debunking the notion of like we need to be like in suits and ties, or we need to speak a certain way, or even, you know, a lot of this has to do with inclusion. A lot of it just has to do with a culture of being buttoned up. And not to say that you have to bring all aspects of your life to work. You know, there's been lots of debate about how much you're bringing your whole self to work. You know, bring what you want, but it should be what you choose, and not that you are wearing a business mask because someone has chosen that for you and you feel like I'm not going to be successful here. So that's just one aspect. There's a whole nother chapter about creativity and debunking the idea that your work needs to be normal in order to be accepted, because normal work is never brilliant work. A lot about busyness and how that gets in our way and is also a way of feeling normal. So I'm trying to slowly dismantle the parts of business culture that I think do not serve us. So I could go on and on. So that part is all about how do we make our working lives more joyful. And then the last third of the book is really about, hopefully we have some really great Mondays through Fridays. Can we also make Saturdays and Sundays more joyful, such that they're not focused on recovering from work and then preparing for work? That can't be our weekends. Nobody wins in that situation, not even the businesses. And so the last part is about how do we really deprogram ourselves from what can be an addiction to success and performance and being on top of everything. And in lieu of that, enjoy more of our lives.
Yeah, makes so much sense. And I think we are conditioned to thinking you have to act in a certain way to be professional, whatever that means. Whereas in my own career, I've always found that being slightly weird in the workplace was a superpower in a way, because it enables you to just be authentically who you are. And I've really tried to stick to that and say, okay, if everyone else wants to wear suits, great, but your choice. But you know, the suit is basically rooted in a suit of armor, and we're not going to war. We're coming here to collaborate on some kind of creative project. You know,
Yeah,
does it really matter?
that's right. That chapter is called Your Brain Works Whether You're Wearing a Suit or Stretchy Pants. It's a little bit pandemic inspired, but it's definitely true. I am just as smart whether my hair is wet because I just got out of the shower and jumped to my Zoom, or whether it's perfectly dried. My brain does not care. I'm just as good at my job.
Yeah, absolutely. You know what always surprises me? You get some people who say, even when I work from home, I put on my suit and then I step outside and open the front door and then I go to my desk, and I think, why? Suits are the most uncomfortable things. But I guess if it helps you to feel more engaged, you go for it.
Yes.
But I'd rather be here in a t-shirt and underpants than, you know,
Yes.
any form of uncomfortable clothing. Yeah.
That's right. I mean, my philosophy is always, if it's working for you and making you happy, then by all means,
Yeah.
you know, but
Yeah.
I want it to be just as welcome for someone to come into work in like a three-piece suit with their
Yeah.
like, you know, paisley tie. And like, Great. I love it.
Yeah.
Sitting next to the person who's in their sweatpants with their
Yeah.
like zip up. Great. Love that too. It's just the permission to do what makes you comfortable and makes you happy without notions of conformity having to squash our sense of comfort and self-expression.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. One of your chapters is on camaraderie at work. For
Mhm.
people who have a team or direct reports, what does a cozy team mean?
Yeah, it was just the most accurate way I could describe the feeling that I had being in teams. The feeling, coziness. I don't. Well, I am in winter here. You are a
Um,
little bit of jealousy going on. You are in summer, but winter can be hard and it can
mm,
be, rough, and your skin is cracking. But there's also the part of winter that feels like coziness, that feels like candles and blankets and all of that. And I think
mm,
about cozy teams. I think sometimes in the same way, because sometimes work is really hard and you are out there amongst the elements with customers and clients and trying to figure out really hard things. And sometimes that's just the state of work. But you have control over what it feels like inside your little work cabin, if you will, if
mhm,
you'll follow the analogy with me. Does it feel like blankets, or does it feel like we're all out there in the snow together? So specifically, what this can mean is doing one of the practical tools I share is doing a check-in every day, which is just like a slightly formalized way of saying, "How are you?" and then actually listening to the answer as opposed to, "How are you?" "Good, good." Uh, it's a practice that takes, I don't know, maybe like 8 minutes at the start of a team meeting if you have sort of a stand-up routine or something like that, where everyone can just go around and say, we usually do it on a scale of 1 to 5. I'm a 3. I'm a 5. And it's not that you have to solve everyone's problems. It's just sometimes just saying what you're bringing with you into the meeting is enough to create that feeling of coziness. Like, I'm a 2. I'm worried about the client meeting this afternoon. I am a 4. I'm also worried about that. But also, did you know it's my birthday this weekend? Oh, Joe, happy birthday. Oh, I'm a 3. Like, I woke up a little bit tired, but I had this great idea.
mhm.
It's just a way for people to start to like crack that candy coating exterior
Yeah.
so that they can feel that they can share what they want to share with that team. And that done repeatedly creates that fireside feeling, because even then, if you're up against the elements of that scary client meeting later that day, you know that you've talked about that with your team. Because even if you're doing hard things, you feel like you've got people with you.
Mm.
The notion, even the word camaraderie.
Hey, Brad here. Would you believe that around 70% of the people who watch this podcast have not yet subscribed? It would mean the world to us if you click that subscribe button on whichever platform you use so that we can stay connected with you and you'll receive notifications when we add new episodes. We really appreciate you coming and connecting with us and being part of our community. So, all the best.
So that feeling of camaraderie can be really important, just in the same way that we talk about camaraderie like in war, your comrades in battle, that you
Mm,
are in the trenches with these people. And there's a reason why those experiences are so powerful, because you feel like it is us against, I mean, hopefully not like the world, but like us against the problem, us against the
mm,
business challenge. And there's something lovely about being in it with other people. Like, I have wonderful friendships from work, and lots of people I think have hopefully had the experience one time or another of having a work bestie. That's somebody that feels like, oh, I'm in it with you. And it's incredibly inoculating
mhm.
against the strains of work. And so it deserved its own chapter.
Absolutely. There's that old wisdom. I don't think it's wisdom, but the old perspective, which is you shouldn't be friends with your coworkers, especially your direct reports. And I can't help but become friends with them because I really do care about the people who I work with. And we tend to just have these long lasting relationships where we work together for decades. And I think that there is another way where if you truly do care about the people you work with, they are super loyal to you on condition that you're loyal to them, and it just works. What are your thoughts about actually becoming friends with your coworkers and even direct reports?
I think it's great. But that's my answer.
Hmm.
I think it's totally possible that someone wants to show up, do their job, not be friends because they've got enough friends and enough stuff going on in the rest of their life. And as I said, my philosophy is always like, if that works for you, that's fine.
Yeah. Mm.
But my point of view for myself, and I think for a lot of people out there, is that I want to like the people I spend my days with.
Yeah.
This feels really uncontroversial to me,
Yeah.
that I've got so many days on this planet. Wherever I'm spending a lot of them, I just want to like the people that I'm around.
Yeah.
And I want to do more than respect them professionally. I want to like laugh with them. I want to care about them. I want to spend time with them. And because work is where we spend so much of our time, to me that feels like a no-brainer. I tell this story in the book about this time I was visiting my mom she was at this rehab facility after an ankle surgery. And she was only like in her 60s at the time, but everyone else there was like 80s or so. And so they had this man there who was reprising old Sinatra classics for all of the people at the facility. And so we were like, okay, we went. And uh, the man was doing a rendition of My Way, that I think it's Frank
Hmm.
Sinatra song.
Mm.
And at the end of it, he said, if we're lucky, we'll have had the chance to do things our way. And even better in our lives, if we've had some good laughs with good people, then we're the lucky ones. And everyone's like nodding, and I'm like crying, and I'm like,
Mm.
I just remember that moment so clearly because it was so simple. Like at the time at work, I wasn't optimizing for good laughs with good people. I was optimizing for like, okay, what's the performance review and what's my impact, and all these things are important. Like I'm not knocking impact in any way, but it just became very clear to me that like unapologetically what I want out of my career is to have had some really good meaningful times with people that I genuinely enjoy.
Hmm.
And then as it happens, while we're having those good times, it's like great to make some money and make some impact and do interesting things and solve interesting problems. So I'm into the friendships.
Yeah. Yeah, so am I. And I mean, I have one person that I've been working with for over a decade, well over a decade, and we hardly ever speak. But the reason is because we both like messaging just using text chat, and it works for both of us. And we got to know each other. In fact, we built several platforms that were used by large companies without ever seeing each other's face because we both found a way that we liked working, but we got to know each other so well that we could detect mood just through messages. And it was fantastic, and we continue to this day, and it's like one of my best friends, I would say.
Hmm.
However, we found a way of working that works for both of us, and there's super high trust, and it just works. And I think that's something that people were not open to. I've seen people try and force others to work in a way that suits just one party, not both. And suddenly trust erodes and people start feeling like, oh, this is just too stressful or whatever. But if you can find a groove with your coworkers that works, you don't have to follow the old style just because everyone else has a weekly team meeting with cameras on doesn't mean you have to force that if it really doesn't work for someone. And that's what I found to be so effective, is to find a shared reality with the people that you work with, and cultivate that and make it really strong. And it's different with each person.
Yeah, I think
Mm,
it's brilliant, and it illustrates like something I so is so foundational to all of my beliefs, which is there are no rules. Like
mhm.
we, the
Yeah,
humans, make up the rules.
yeah.
We've invented work as we know it, and we've invented it like culturally over time, but also within any organization, we invent it. Within any team, we invent it for ourselves. We invent it, and I love you and this person invented it the way that is really fulfilling, like is great for you.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, one of the things I most hope comes from the book is that people feel empowered to design their work however it works for them, regardless of whether it's within the norms of corporate
Mm,
culture or not.
yeah. One of the themes in your book is work like you're dying. And I know we've touched on this, but perhaps you could unpack that concept.
Yeah. So, yeah, no, I mentioned, yeah, so I've been a caregiver the last several years. I mentioned my mother when we found out about her diagnosis. I took immediate leave from work and spent about 9 months caring for her. My father has dementia, and so I'm, as an only child, I'm the caregiver for him. It was all of that. I think I developed like a very keen sense of mortality, like anybody would in those situations. And certainly there's the sort of cliched, I have a near death experience, midlife crisis, sort of like um, awakening. And I guess I don't know if I'm honest, I probably had something like adjacent to that. Um, but I think what it really made me realize is lives end and bodies break. I don't know, in my very like
Yeah.
existential dread
Mm,
it just be, because I'm a healthy, you know, 40 something, like it, I haven't yet experienced that. Um, so as I mentioned, like going to all of these specialist doctors and sitting in the hospitals, I think for me, it felt like such stark contrast to what all of my peers were saying and feeling in the workplace, which
mhm.
is get it over with. You're in consulting. Like, how do we make this month? Okay, we've got one quarter left. Hustle, hustle, hustle. Um, like I'll be so happy when this project is over. I'll be so happy when this quarter is over. Uh, it just made me realize that we can feel that way, and yet at some point I think anybody wakes up to whether this happens when you're 40 or when you're 80, you wake up to the notion that your days are finite.
Mm,
And how did we spend them? If we spent them working, then what were the quality of those days when we were working? And so, yes, so one of the there's like a good bit of existential dread, I think, in the book, just helping to create some urgency around the idea that our working days should be good days, and not in a way to guilt anybody who's not having fun at work. Like, in fact, the book is for them, because sometimes work is not fun. And one of the chapters is most work, most days should be fun, because not all days are fun and not all work
sure.
is fun.
Mm,
But on the whole, if we aren't having a good time, and I say that's like, purpose is good and like that, but like even beyond purpose, like if we're not like smiling once in a while, laughing once in a while, like enjoying our days, then we're not really enjoying our careers, and
mhm,
thereby the bulk of our lives. Um, and so it's really just a call for reflection, um, so
mhm.
that we don't, because it's really easy, I think, to speed by months and years feeling unhappy at work. And I don't want anyone to do that and wind up in a place full of regret.
Absolutely. Yeah. Just being aware. I mean, people think it's a little morbid. I think about that a lot personally. I think about, these are precious days. And if I wake up and feel that sense of dread, oh, here we go, another day of this. It's like Steve Jobs said, if he experiences that too many days in a row, it's time to make a really big change. And it's sad, people waking up every day going, oh, here we go, another day, another dollar, that kind of mindset. When actually a small shift in even, and it's not just saying, okay, use cognitive behavioral therapy and go and reframe it like, oh, I'm so happy to be here. But it is a call to action for life. I mean, I see this in my daughter. She wakes up some days and goes, oh, I don't want to go to school today.
Mm,
It's going to be the worst day ever. You probably will have worse days than this. In fact, I hope you do, because
yeah.
it's not that bad. But just making the most of it and just looking at the situation and going, okay, well, I'm here. If I don't like it, what are my options? Because there probably are other options available to you. You don't have to keep doing it. I mean, sometimes you do because you need the financial stability until you can make a proper change. Are there other ways to just make it fun? Like, you can always interrupt your own patterns, and because we do build patterns and habits, and it's kind of like, I get to my desk, I have my coffee, I check my emails. By the time I'm finished that, I'm feeling angry and exhausted. Like, break the pattern, book a meeting with yourself, work on something meaningful, have a catch up with someone you don't normally catch up with. I think there are many options that people just forget because we're creatures of habit.
Yes. I love the book of meeting with yourself. That's a
Yeah,
nice one.
I do that a lot.
It's good. So yeah, you get tired of all the other people. Like, well,
Yeah,
like book a meeting with Brad. Brad,
yeah.
what are we doing today? Yeah.
Exactly. And work on something that gets you into flow state. I mean, something that you've got the skills for, that's aligned with what you need to achieve, what the organization needs to achieve, but that you usually delay because it's not super urgent, because we'll often just fill our space with urgency and then, freak out when that big important project is looming, and work late at night or on weekends, which is not great. So it's just
Yeah.
book meetings with yourself throughout the week so that you can get into your flow zone. And the research shows when we're in flow, we're 500% more productive. And it's rewarding. It feels good because we're matching skills to challenge and doing something that lights us up. Why wouldn't we do that? And I've always found booking meetings with myself to be a good tool.
That's a great one.
Mm, mm,
Yeah, you're right. There's so much that we can experiment with, even within the construct of, oh, I don't like my company, I don't like my work. There's definitely the question of like, should I find other work if I can find it? But even within a horrible job, there's still so many avenues for joy. So, as you said, can I find a flow state within some portion of the work? Or we talked about camaraderie. My chapter on
mm. Yeah.
camaraderie is you can happily shovel shit if you like your co-shovelers. Like that's the, like there, if you can find one person that you kind of like, in a healthy way, gossiping with at work, like then you
Yeah.
find a little joy.
Yeah.
Or there's a segment in the book about thin slicing our joy, which is if this month at work is way too much and stressful, can you just focus on the day? If the day feels like, oh God, I can't do this day, can you focus just on the next hour? What's your next hour? If that hour feels too much, then think about, okay, in the next few minutes, can I just get myself a nice cup of coffee? Can I find a little cinnamon at the coffee shop or in the kitchen and like something that makes this next minute joyful?
Hmm.
It's been a strategy I've used in life and in work, but like if it's too hard to find joy, proclaim your life all joy, can you just find it in the next minute? And usually if you get small enough, you can find a little bit of joy even if everything else is going wrong.
You can always find that, or create it. Create that
Hmm.
moment of joy, or be of service, or check in with someone and see how they're doing. Or yeah, there's so many
Yeah.
things that we can do at any point each day. What do you mean by, do I want that prize when considering career ambitions?
Yeah, that's the name of one of the segments. It's a phrase that I started saying to myself when I would feel my own ambition monster rear her ugly head. So, for example, Finland had a 35-year-old prime minister, this woman
Mhm.
whose name I'm forgetting. And I remember when I first read about that,
Mm.
I wish my response was like, "Oh, that's amazing for like it's not look at like the feminism and there's no ages like wow, look at," but instead my first reaction was like, "Why am I not the leader of a nation? Like why what? Like I'm behind. I'm like very behind. Like she was able to do this at 35." And sometimes I don't know if it's like my education or culture or the conditioning or it's just me, but something in me when I see some sort of like classically desirable notion of success, my instinct is like, oh, I want to get that. Why don't I have that? How do I get that?
Mhm.
Until I ask myself the question, Bree, do you want that prize? If you're going to climb that mountain, do you want what's at the top of the mountain?
Mm.
So I ask myself, Bree, do you want to be in politics? Would you want to lead a nation? And the answer is no. That
Mhm.
sounds horrible. I don't want to, I didn't like running for student council when I was in 5th grade. No, I don't want to run for president. You know, I mean, this totally disregards the fact that I would not be qualified or any good at it, but like, would I even want that prize?
Mm.
And I think about this sometimes within any sort of organizational culture, it's almost assumed as obvious that you would want the next role up. Like, of course, everyone wants the promotion. So if you're the manager, you want to be the senior manager, and then you want to be the director and the senior, you know, and up and up and up. But sometimes we should ask ourselves, like, that job way up at the top, do you even want to, like, what is the prize? And a lot of
Mm.
times the prize is you look at the person in that job and they're working all nights and weekends. They're
Yeah.
incredibly stressed out with the responsibility. They are working cross-functionally and getting pummeled in all different direct like so you ask yourself like, do I want the prize if I were to work that hard? And I
Mm.
think, you know, if the answer is yes, then amazing, then go for it. But to me, it's the antidote to whatever has been conditioned into me from whatever source that tells me I should always want more money, more
Mm.
prestige, more scope, whatever that is, because that's what an adult does. And I think we should get to say if we do not want that, if that does
Yeah.
not sound like fun. And so that can look like anything from a lateral career move to changing careers to staying where you are with for a while, because frankly, work is not the only place you can get a promotion. Like you can go from like mediocre sleeper to excellent sleeper. You could give yourself a sleep promotion, or like, you know, sort of mediocre spouse to like superstar spouse. Like there's other places in our lives that we can look that we can devote our ambition to outside of work.
Mm.
And so any place we put our effort, I think we should ask ourselves if we want the reward, you know, at the top of that mountain.
Yeah. Absolutely. I've worked with many CEOs of large companies, and they have pursued that prize, and many of them are not that happy. But, and people resent the fact that they earn huge paychecks. But honestly, if you look at their life, it's, you kind of need that because because what they do to themselves is not normal. It's not great. Every now and then you meet an enlightened CEO who's found balance and found a way to achieve care for themselves and their family and their community and so forth, and that's fantastic. But that's rare. It's usually
Mm-hmm.
someone who is abusing themselves or has just put on the thickest coat of armor and is willing to make those really hard decisions, and they're still humans at the end of the day. They still lie awake and toss and turn because there's so much pressure. It's not fun. It's not fun. But for some people, it kind of is, for at least for a little while. So, yeah. be careful what you what you pursue. It is possible to also have a great career and equally devote time to your kids and to your spouse and have some fun and disconnect completely when you go on holiday, for example. Something I'm still struggling with, but
It's
but
hard.
I really like that you focused in on that. You also have a whole chapter about brilliant work and how to do it. You point to busyness and normalness as culprits holding us back. Can you tell us more?
Yes. So this is, I think the whole book is just my pet peeves with things, just put now into like a very
I
professional
love that.
color. It's just all the things that really annoyed me working in, the corporate world. But one of them is I just get really bored by most work that's put out there. And so
Mhm.
this is like the strategy deck that says the strategy is to make more money. It's like, what? Like, that is great. But how? Or like, with what angle? And like, how are you going to use your it's just so uninteresting.
Yeah.
And or it's any sort of planning or even advertising. You look at advertising for any bank and it just looks like advertising for a bank. Like, there's
Yeah.
nothing interesting or compelling about it. And you can tell that it's so professionalized, and it was, they had their round tables of feedback, and then everyone gave the feedback, and they wound up in some sort of don't try not to make anyone mad kind of place. They woke up with something really ended up with something really generic, and it just bores me. It makes me, I mean, speaking of sort of a existential notion, like, it just makes me feel like our time is too short to be making boring work. If we have an
Mm.
interesting idea, an interesting angle, something that kind of scares us, something that pushes the boundaries, like, let's try that. Like, let's, let for most work anyway. I mean, if I'm on an airplane, I don't want the pilot experimenting at that point. Like, there's
Yeah.
some instances where I'm like, do it the boring way. Like,
Yeah.
fly
Yeah.
me to Portland the most boring way you know how.
Yeah.
But because I work in a lot of these, in like a knowledge worker kind of um, industry, really what people are being paid for is their thinking, and not their lowest common denominator thinking, but they're really brilliant thinking. And so often I see two culprits that get in the way of that brilliant thinking getting out into the world. One of them is busyness. We are really, really good at keeping ourselves busy
Mm.
with meetings and the sort of low hanging tasks that feel good, and pushing off any of the flow time tasks that you mentioned,
Mm.
because those are they're scary. They don't feel productive in the moment. Like, what they feel like is like sitting staring at a screen or like spinning in a meeting, because that's like the actual hard work. So because the busyness feels good, we tend to do a lot of that, and then there's no time for like the actual brilliant thinking.
Mhm.
And I think we do that sort of subconsciously, because the brilliant thinking is the scary work. And then the second thing that gets in our way is this conformity, the normalness, that when because no one really knows what they're doing at work, we're all sort of making it up. If it feels scary, it feels like the most safe thing to do is to make our work look like other people's work.
Yeah.
Like, oh, my deck looked like every other deck we've produced for the last year. Don't blame me. I'm just doing it how everybody else did it, which is a form of safety. There's
Mhm.
safety in that kind of numbers, but it's also just so boring. And I think
Mhm.
after a while, I was like, I just want to be entertained. Like, I just like, eh, but even further, not just me at work wanting to be entertained, customers want to be entertained, clients want to be entertained, and not in a shallow sort of entertain me way, but in a really rich, what are all the beautiful ways that we can put our skills and talents to work in the world that have real impact on people and make people's lives better? Like, that's interesting. That's compelling. And it's ultimately what people are attracted to. The people are attracted to things that are uh, new and a little bit risky and have a real point of view on them. And so that whole chapter is just my beef with being bored at work.
Yeah, I love it. What about people who try and, the system knocks them back down and says, don't be different. We don't want someone like that. Is it a case of maybe this is not the right type of work for you?
Well, I'll give a whole like big caveat to this work. It's or to this idea that there will be there will be parts of everyone's kind of there will be parts of any role that are just do it the straightforward way. No
Hmm.
one wants me getting creative with my expenses. They want me to do my expenses like everyone else has done their expenses
True.
for years. And so the grain of salt is like there's going to be parts of your work that are there will only be parts of your work where you want to put that creative energy. Uh, there will also be moments in any business when you want to really push boundaries and push ahead. This could be like you're in startup mode, you're in growth mode. There will also be times in a business where you're a little bit more like we found something that works. Don't poke the cash cow. So it's all nuanced, of
Hmm.
course. But my belief is more often than not, there are opportunities to be bolder and we are not taking them. For an individual who's being told, get back in your box, please, like stop. We got a few options. One option is to find a new organization that's in a different. So some companies will just always be really risk averse.
Yeah.
And for some that works, and for some that puts them out of business. You can choose if you want to be part of that company or not. Uh, but if you do, I find there's always a way to put your stamp on work, even if it's not as big as reinventing your whole department. Sort of like the idea of thin slicing. If you can't reinvent your company's strategy because your boss is like, get back in your box. This is, we're doing strategy how we've always done strategy. Well, that's fine. Can you reinvent, I don't know, one aspect of how you go to market? Can you reinvent one meeting? Can you try you can sort of shrink it down to size. My hope for people, though, is that when they feel some sort of creative energy bubbling up inside them, that they have some place to put that. And ultimately, organizations should want them to have some place to put that. You do not want to employ all sorts of brilliant people who are leaking their creative energy out on the weekend. I mean, that's good for them, but also like for an organization, you should want that creative energy in your
Mm.
business. It's
Hmm.
good for everybody. And so I guess the long answer, well, I gave the long answer. The short answer is that hopefully you can find some sort of creativity release valve, even if it's not perfect, even if it's not big, but some way that you can put your own stamp, your own point of view on your work.
Hmm. Even if it's just challenging the paradigm, being kind to others and saying good morning and offering support or something. There's always a way of doing it, even if, for example, if you work in insurance or if you work in a business where it's all process driven, you could still
Mhm.
find ways to help others or come up with some new ideas that don't necessarily challenge the norm. As you said, you don't want a pilot going, what happens if I fly sideways? Of course not.
Mhm.
But maybe finding other ways to work together, even just a creative announcement on the plane. It makes everyone's day when someone does something like that.
I love it when they do that. Yes.
Mm.
Once in a while, you get the flight attendant who you know is doing stand up on the side and
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
They're just so great because
Yeah.
why not? Like, why not have a little fun with the
Mm,
airplane announcement? It makes me
mm.
feel at ease. It makes me feel taken care of. It gives me a little laugh, which is good because I'm kind of a nervous flyer.
Yeah.
Why not? Why should we be so professional in the
Mm,
way that we think of professional? Like professional means respectful, kind, you're good at your work, you do what you'll say. There's no need for formality, in my
mm.
opinion.
I've been thinking a lot about life as a movie slash video game. Who wants to watch a movie that is just boring, repetitive? You are the hero of your journey and of your movie. So spice it up. Do things that will be unexpected and that will give you some joy, and push yourself out of your perceived boundaries, and just experiment with it. Have fun, because at the end of the day, there's that book about the regrets of the dying, and often it's just that they didn't live a life that was true to themselves, that they didn't spend time with those that they cared about, that they wished that they'd laughed more. Like, you can do it today, and I think that's really the message
Yes.
from your book.
I'm trying to write that book for people who are still in it. Yes. Who can still, because it's just for fun. I don't know.
Hmm.
I think this is what I've learned through the book is like our lives should be fun. And we spend a
Yeah.
lot of our lives working. And so therefore, work should be fun. Like it's both, to me, it feels profound and stupid, but at the same time, like if this is how we're spending our days on the planet, like I hope that I spend mine laughing. And I think I do. And, and if that book, all sorts of studies to like, oh, what really drives happiness? It's the quality of our relationships. It's did we have those laughs? Well, then why
Hmm.
are we pretending it's something different at work?
Yeah.
Why are we pretending that like, oh, I spent my life creating value for shareholders? Like, no, no, no. Like,
Hmm.
that's a good thing too. But first and foremost, like employees are devoting their lives to organizations, not forever maybe, but like at least one at a time. And like that dedication should be taken seriously and valued. And so that's what I'm trying to change with the book, that
Mm.
we take those days at the office seriously enough, I guess ironically, that we decide to spend them laughing with people that we like, doing brilliant work, putting ourselves out there, having a bit of fun. Uh, because I think that just makes for better days.
It really does. There's a good deal of stoicism running through the book. Is that a philosophy that has been important to you?
Yes. Yeah, when I was caring for my mom, I was like, oh God, like I need to fortify myself. It was the hardest time I've had in my life. And so my immediate go-tos were I found a therapist I could talk to. He prescribed some antidepressants, and then I prescribed myself some stoicism. And between those things, I was well fortified. We would even talk about, he's like, stoicism and antidepressants, like this is a powerful combination. I was like, yes, there's no drug interactions here. So yes, it was a philosophy that I dug into. I think given its focus on mortality,
Mhm.
for those who don't know, some of the core tenets of stoicism are a real clear headedness around what you can control and what you can't control. So I felt very clear in my mind, like I could not control my mother's cancer. It was not for me to save her. So she could have cancer and I could be miserable, or she could have cancer and we could have a real hell of a time in the time
Mhm.
that she had left. It's so I found the philosophy really really compelling, really soothing. There were a few other stoic phrases that I think were helpful in life, but also in work. One is, well, one of the most famous is memento mori, remember you will die. So I think about that at work, like,
Right.
this is a day of my life. I'm spending it. It better be good. Another one is amor fati, which means to love your fate.
Mm.
So not just endure your fate, like, I have to do this presentation and I don't want to, but like, is there a way I could love it?
Yeah.
Be like, I'm so happy I can do this presentation because now, like, this obstacle provides all sorts of opportunities for me. I could sort of get into it. I could choose a cool typeface. I could, so to me, it felt really empowering dealing with everything I was dealing with. It also felt really empowering to me at work too, which is why I think I wove so much of it into the story, because so much so so much of what frustrates us at work or upsets us are things that really are out of our control.
Mhm.
The market is bad, or a coworker said something that you didn't like, or someone make a decision that you didn't like. To me, it felt really empowering to lean into, like, oh, they did? Okay. They could have made this decision and I'm going to go home angry and screaming about it, or they made this decision and I'm going to be like, great, they can make that decision. That's their decision to make.
Yep.
Now, what should I do? Like, now, like, what are my options? How can I make this good for myself? And so, yes, so there is a chapter in the book called Keep It Cool. We're all in it together, which is all about emotional regularity at
Mhm.
work. Like, how do you regulate your own emotions given there is so much that happens at work that will frustrate us? So, as much as the book is about fun, and it is, I still wanted to look head on at what is categorically unfun, which is the stress, the frustrations, the annoying people, the bad decisions, and then how do we regulate ourselves through that such that we still have capacity for fun and camaraderie and all of those other things, because so easily those negative emotions can swallow us whole and then we're definitely not having fun.
Mhm.
So yeah, so stoicism is very much the basis for a lot of that philosophy.
Love it. I love it when we can apply ancient wisdom, the principles of ancient wisdom to modern life. And it's incredible how relevant it is. People have been thinking about these ideas for 2,000 years, and it's more relevant than ever, which is testament to how great these tools are that are available to us. Final question I have for you is what was your first job?
My first my first job, I was a dancer in a magic show
Hmm.
at Six Flags Great America. I grew up outside of Chicago. It was a crazy first job. It was definitely not anything like the corporate life I came to know. We did 6 shows a day. I learned all the magic tricks on how they cut people in half, and we made a Harley disappear and a NASCAR appear, and um, all the different secret boxes and lighting and smoke and mirrors and all that. And uh, yeah, it was like a really good day at the office. I thought, like, I got to like dress up and put on a show, and I think at the time I'd made $75 a day, which I thought was like, that is bank. I was in high school. So I'm like, oh, I'm making great money. I'm doing, getting to be a performer. It was great. It was a great entry into the working world.
Amazing. I also had a foray with magic when I was traveling
Ooh.
through India. I decided to contact one of India's most famous magicians, and I didn't realize I was going for training. I thought I was just going to go and meet him for fun because it's not something that travelers usually do. But I arrived and he proceeded to take me through magician training. So I was like, well, why not? I'm here. And it's very interesting. You learn a lot about yourself, about staying calm under pressure, about performing, and yeah, of course we can't reveal the secrets, but
No.
it is pretty fun.
Do you think that we did this whole podcast wrong and this should have been a magic show? Now that we
Maybe
know each other's strengths, like, did we just talk about work for an hour instead of doing magic tricks?
there's always a part two.
That's right.
Bree, thanks so much. Congratulations on the book. It'll be out in May 2025. Where can people find it? Where would you like them to go to contact or connect with you?
Yes. So actually, it'll be out more like July
Okay.
2025. Um, you know, the publishing process is it's like a bit of a whirlwind, but it's going to be out this summer,
Yeah.
for sure. And to learn more about me, you can go to my website, breegroff.com. And then from there, you can find things like how to pre-order the book. You can subscribe to my Substack and follow me on LinkedIn, and we'll be digital friends.
Fantastic. Everyone, do check out those links. They're in the show notes below. Bree, any final thoughts for those who stuck with us to the end?
Oh, I hope you have a good day. That's my hope.
I
Thank you for having me,
love that.
Brad.
Thank you so much. Thank you all for tuning in, and we'll see you in the next episode. Check out those links.